So mental illness in teenagers is a serious and growing health concern. 1 in 7 teenagers will experience a mental health problem. Suicide amongst youth is the leading cause of death. The most common mental illness that I see clinically amongst teenagers are things like a complete collapse in the way of depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, interpersonal stresses such as bullying, and a kind of an anguished desire to fit in. Problems with identity, including sexual identity, self-harm, suicidality, isolation. The best way to treat mental illness in teenagers is, I think, by using a community approach. So that would include individual psychotherapy for the teenager, as well as providing some support therapeutically for the parents, and also some support at the school level too. So for whoever is treating that teenager to have some contact with the relevant people at school, which might include the deputy principal and the school counsellor, so that that young person is able to be supported both at home and at school. Teenagers can often look like they don't want help and can refuse help. Part of the teenage developmental task is to separate and individuate, and sometimes the only way that they feel they can do that is to withdraw. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they don't want to be engaged with or have help. It's just it is up to all of us really to find ways in which to engage the teenager. And often that's by trying to understand them and to be able to have them feel like there's a listener that actually hears what they have to say. I don't think that medication is the answer. I think if medication were the answer, we would see a decline in teenage mental health problems. Rather, we're seeing an increase in mental health problems amongst teens. I think it's not to say that medication needs to be ruled out completely, but one of the things I have observed clinically is that when teenagers go down the medication route, they will say that it works for a little time, and then down the track it suddenly doesn't seem to be working, whatever that means. So they'll go back to their treating doctor and go on a different medication or a different dose, and then before you know it, they're on a merry-go-round of medication changes and dosage changes. Then I believe that the treatment then becomes a bit too focused on the medication and less focused on what might be underlying that teenager's difficulties and what capacities they might need to build in order to help them through a very difficult developmental time. My advice to parents that have a teenager with mental health problems is firstly to accept the child they have as they are. Sometimes parents get so anxious, understandably anxious, that they push their teenager or try to push their teenager out of the mental health problem, which of course pushes them more into it. So the first piece of advice I would say is to just accept their child for what they're going through and accept their child as they are today. The second piece of advice would be to have faith and belief that their child we'll continue to grow and develop, and we'll get through it. The third piece of advice is for parents to seek whatever supports they need in order to contain their own anxieties, because often these sorts of difficulties in teenagers can take time, and parents need to be prepared for a marathon rather than a sprint. My advice for teenagers that are experiencing mental health difficulties would be to find someone that they feel really safe with, that they can start talking about what they are experiencing, because keeping things to yourself keeps you in an unsafe place.